Hi, I'm Kevin, and this is Raised on Film. Dragons. People love dragons. They're a hot commodity. We can't seem to go to the movies or flip through our streaming services without seeing a litany of content with dragons. They've been prominently featured in 3 of the highest-grossing franchises of the last 2 decades. Apparently, we just can't get enough dragons. But it wasn't always this way. Long, long ago, there was a time when fantasy was firmly cemented on the far-flung fringes of good taste. It wasn't until the Lord of the Rings trilogy that we discovered how to utilize dragons properly, as huge, intimidating, and fiercely loyal, fire-breathing monsters. The doors of nerddom swung open on a grand scale, and the collective we fell head over heels for the big, scaly beasts. Prior to this, seeing a dragon in a film was usually a red flag, a sign that the film in question was schlocky, low budget, and generally of poor quality. But it didn't stop filmmakers from swinging for the fences with dragon lore, hoping that eventually they would get it right. Let's look at 2 of the last dragon films to be made before we fell in love with dragons. Let's look at DragonHeart and Reign of Fire. DragonHeart is a 1996 film released hot on the heels of Braveheart that attempts to capitalize on the latter's folksy Knights and Maiden era appeal. Look no further than the title. It follows Bowen, played by Dennis Quaid, a disenchanted Dragonslayer searching for the dragon that donated half his heart to the king when he was young and dying, and in turn made the king evil. Maybe. Eventually, Bowen finds the dragon in question, and after a fight, they form a truce and go into business together? Grifting local lords out of gold.
Pesky critters, dragons.
Oh, and I should mention the dragon talks.
Virtue. Truth.
A lot.
Long ago, when man was young and the dragon already old, the wisest of our race took pity on man.
And
He
is
gathered
voiced by
together
Sean
all the
Connery.
dragons, making them vow to watch over man, always. And at the moment of his death,
Yeah, see?
the night became
Still going.
alive with those stars. And thus was born the dragon's heaven.
Yeah,
But when
it
we
goes
die,
on like this.
not all dragons are admitted to this shining place. No, we...
The dragon is as confused as the film, where 1 minute the villain, Einan, deviously played by David Thewlis, is picking off toiling peasants for fun with a bow and arrow.
A moving target.
Peasant scum.
And the next minute is a prolonged fight between Bowen and Draco full of broad slapstick and irreverent jokes. This entire scene takes place inside the dragon's mouth.
No, stop!
Let's switch gears. This is the 2002 film Reign of Fire. If this film came out today, it would be a huge hit. It's a star-studded, dragon-filled, dystopian action film. Maybe the only film with dragons ever made which supposes they exist in a non-fantasy world, and in the far-flung future world of 2020. The film follows Quinn, who is the leader of a group of people held up in a castle taking refuge from dragons, which have ransacked the world and are a constant threat. Van Zan, which is what he insisted being called on set, Van Zan and his band of militaristic Americans intrude upon the castle and challenge their pacifist lifestyle with their highly militarized, aggressive way of being.
Don't be a fool. We can do this easy, or we can do it real easy.
In the end, they both learn that in order to live, survive, and thrive, they must cooperate and meld their philosophies. Sort of. This film has a lot going for it. The design is pretty great, albeit ugly. The performances are pretty off the rails, especially Van Zan.
To London!
And the dragons are well designed, utilized, and thankfully don't talk. Technically, they aren't dragons, though. They're wyverns. Dragons have 4 legs. Wyverns like these only have 2. By the way, these are also wyverns. And while a detail like that may seem like splitting hairs, it actually points to the heart of why Reign of Fire failed. The dragons are kind of inconsequential to the plot. Obviously, it revolves around coping with and destroying these dragons, but there is nothing about them being dragons which has any real bearing on the story.
We figure they're like fish. The females spawn the eggs. One male passes over.
Why would they be like fish? Why would they be like fish? The external threat could just as easily have been UFOs, robots, big birds, or anything really, and the story of pacifism versus brute force would remain mostly unchanged. So why dragons? Well, I believe it was to make a movie which appealed to the traditional action movie-loving audiences while also appealing to nerddom, and in so doing, they made a film which doesn't appeal to either. Reign of Fire is too bogged down in wild masculine energy and militarism to appeal to most nerds, and too rife with fantastical elements to appeal to action movie audiences. It somehow managed to slide itself perfectly into an uncanny valley of appeal. While these dragons are largely superfluous to the film itself, the same cannot be said about DragonHeart, where the dragon is the literal heart of the film. And unfortunately, Draco is pretty intolerable. He's clingy, lonely, horny for Quaid,
Have you been watching over me all night?
horny for Dina Meyer,
Well, you're not like a dragon at all.
Well, how many dragons do you know?
horny for sheep,
Hello.
and depressed.
Yes, Knight. I do long for death. But fear it.
But not so depressed that he won't take part in a scheme which he benefits in no way from and in fact has moral qualms with.
When you squeeze the nobility, it's the peasants who feel the pinch.
Peasant scum.
It's also weird. DragonHeart and Reign of Fire are very special films. They sit at the tail end of an era gasping its final dying breaths. Similar to films like Total Recall, which show the last vestiges of practical special effects before CGI became the norm, these two films show the last attempts to make sense of dragons before we got it right. They both miss the mark completely, but in doing so create two films which are delightfully naive and harken back to a simpler era, before dragons ruled media. Thank you so much for watching Raised on Film. Do you like dragons? What's your favorite color dragon? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like what we do, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. Word of mouth is always good. And stay tuned. We've got more celebratory movie content coming.